How long is this tree already in training as a bonsai?
I would say this tree's probably been in training as a bonsai for rough estimate would be between 15 and 25 years. It's hard to say. It's clearly been wired. It's clearly been wired at least two or three times, right? Probably a lot more, but it's really hard to say after that, because a lot of times what happens with junipers is to avoid wire scars, they're unwired rather quickly. So when we look at these older branches, we don't see virtually no remnants of wire, maybe a few lines here and there. But what that means is it was continually unwired and rewired and unwired and rewired. And when that happens, you get this kind of characteristic where it doesn't hold a solid shape. What also happens if it's allowed to grow is those branches become heavy and they get that sort of drooping nature that this tree has. So not only has it been wired like that, it's also grown like that as a result of the weight of the branches.
How old is the tree, you think?
I think the tree's probably 250, 300 years old. So this is after the initial pruning and removal of branches. And one of the things that I learned during my apprenticeship was that bonsai trees are not created by heavy bends and strict manipulation. It's created by your ability to select the correct branches and prune properly. Most of Mr. Kimura's work was dictated by that, and this was the last thing that we really learn as apprentices. So this is probably what took me 6 years to learn, and something that I think is undervalued in terms of a technique in bonsai. But for a tree that had become this overgrown, we wanted to expose the structure, so you can see how much we've removed. We still have plenty of foliage here, and the emphasis was on improving the structure, eliminating branches that were weak, and eliminating branches that were not going to contribute to the design. Okay? So the original concept of this tree was to have the apex come as far this way as possible and really create some length here. And I think after having lowered this branch here, we've lowered this, okay? And then we've also brought it this way, so I'm going to rotate it, okay? What we found is, outside of eliminating this apex and utilizing a different branch, we still have the visual weight on this side of the tree. So as opposed to having the apex come this way and run this out this way, I think we're going to try and expose this interesting portion at the top and create the apex from this portion of the tree, potentially moving out in that direction. So as you eliminate branches and start to work through the structure of the tree, initial concepts sometimes need to be altered to adjust to the potential that the tree has once you can see more. And we're just going to work with this tree as an old juniper and see if we can't maximize the potential of what we've got now that we've gotten rid of everything that's unnecessary. So we have two real options to provide the length and the movement in the tree on this side. We can either utilize this longer branch here and extend it, pull this out towards this direction to gain length here and potentially eliminate this branch completely, okay? Opening up more negative space. Or we can bring this out here, have a nice little pad here, and potentially get rid of this to once again open up negative space. Now initially when we had thought about the first design, this branch in the back here, this guy here, okay? This was considered as potentially being something we could bring towards the front. However, when we eliminated this big branch down here, this guy, pulled this out, okay? We opened up some negative space here that I think it's going to be beneficial if we utilize this so that we just get a little hint of foliage in this negative space here and it doesn't feel so open and potentially naked. So the main aspect of work now is setting the structure. And in terms of redesigning a tree, the structural setting, the branch elimination, and the setting of this entire shape is 90% of the work. Right? Once we've accomplished that, anybody can do the fine wiring and make it look nice. But the structure is really what's going to dictate the future of this tree. And one of the important things when you're working on a juniper of this nature that's old and established and has been designed in a bonsai for many years is to not load all of these old branches with heavy wire. So we're going to focus on redirecting these smaller branches here, okay? and then we're going to wire out the tips. And any movement that we need to get in these section of branches, we're going to use guy wire to achieve. So in areas such as this, where we only have one branch that needs direction and wire, to apply wire to this branch when it's going to have no effect or it's unnecessary only adds excessive content and excessive wire to the situation. So to wire this effectively as a single wire, we preform a hook in the wire. Okay? Now this hook needs to fit snugly in this area so that as I begin to wire this smaller branch, I don't want this to move much and damage the tissue here. Okay? So once I get that snug fit, then I have a solid anchor point to wire the rest of the branch with. Okay. So this whole section of the tree, as we've basically pulled all of the branches down to replace the branch that we removed down below and to reduce the width of the silhouette since we've reduced the height of the tree. We're lowering everything. This major section of the tree has to be lowered in its entirety. And so we have a gin here, which is a very convenient location. We have our guy wire here. Okay? So we're going to utilize this gin as a location to apply the leverage. Okay? And we have to find a stable place down below to brace this. Okay? So we have this dead wood here that conveniently has a hole in it and provides a perfect location, okay, to tie off to. So now we were able to close the gap between these two, unify the branches, and decrease the width of the silhouette yet again. The structure is set. Everything looks in disarray, looks completely and totally unorganized. And for people that aren't experienced in terms of setting the structure initially, this would look like a very poor piece of work. However, this is the point upon which the major majority of the work is done. The heavy work has occurred. The branches have been selected, they've been bent and positioned, and now all of these smaller, finer branches need to be organized to give organization and detail to the structure we've created. So as we go through each of these branches, this design will slowly, piece by piece, start to puzzle itself together. And what looks like sort of a smorgasbord of branches right now will have clarity and simplicity added to them in order to see the final. So we had talked earlier about the potential to either utilize this branch or utilize this branch as the main branch that's going to give us our flow. As is, this silhouette is going to be very round. A round silhouette is the worst shape you can have, in particularly a conifer. Okay? We want to establish the flow here so that we have length at the very tip of this, which means we're going to open up a little bit of negative space by removing this branch. Now that we see we can get this branch to the location we want it to be. And we've got a branch back here in the back, which you're going to see after we remove this. We're going to provide depth as well as an inset so that this protrudes out, back in, and out here. And that's what gives us the real visual interest in the silhouette of a conifer. So, there we go. The reason is, okay, if you're gonna, I'll just stop talking. And wiring juniper is the same as when we wired white pine in terms of the tip of this wire. Okay, this needs to prop up this whole thing here. So this final wire is here. Once we eliminated this branch here, we needed to pull this branch out to establish the length. We wanted this to be longer. So what we did is we attached a guide wire to the wire that we had already applied here, and we pulled this branch up against a piece of rebar here, which pulled it out, and then we used the wire to elongate it so that we gain this length. So we have the rebar, which is actually hooked underneath this piece of deadwood, and it's sitting on top of this branch here, and we use this to pull this main branch here up so that we could elongate the tip out. As we progress through the structure of this tree, we're finding different elements that are appealing that we want to bring out, and this elbow here at the top is something that has started to become a major focal point of the upper portion of this tree. To see the deadwood here, have it continue through the entire design up into the upper portion of the tree, and then have the apex be based around that. It's kind of an element that we want to include in the design. Originally, we were going to have the tree coming back on itself to increase the dynamic appeal of the tree, and what we found is that with that, we're kind of more or less reaching a stagnant point, and so we're going to see what we can do to expose that area with the apex, potentially the facing that way or this way, utilizing this as the long point, or at some point utilizing that branch as the back, from the back as the long point. To finish off the tree today, we're going to try to expose this and have this element be present and visible in the final design, which means that the structure of this apex needs to be built around the concept of exposing this as an element of the design. We're going to try to frame it in by using some of these branches in the back here so that we've got some green here kind of holding your eye around this element, and then we're going to try to reduce the height of this apex as much as we possibly can to continue to compact that design and frame things around this section of the tree. If you take a look here, this top is split. Okay? So we're going to try to bring this down and this down separately and just open that up a little bit so that we can compress this as much as possible, right? Because we want to reduce the height of this tree. It was part of the concept of taking the rebar and actually lowering all of this structure. So we're going to continue it all the way to the top of the tree, that same theme of compacting the proportions of the tree to really maximize the impact around the trunk. Finished product, originally we cut off that big long branch that was emerging from this gen and was located over here, creating a tremendous amount of negative space and a void over in the back portion of the tree. And so we took this secondary branch in the rear, which we thought at some point may actually form a branch on this side, shifted it to the left to fill in that negative space, pulled this branch out to create some of this flow running this direction, and then we lowered every aspect of the top portion of this tree here, here, and here in 3 locations so that we could expose this elbow, which has become a significant feature. One thing that's important to realize about this design though, just because we wanted to highlight this feature doesn't mean we pull everything away from it and fully expose it. Instead, integrating this feature into the design and sort of showing sections or only a hint, a slight portion of it is really kind of a feature and an aesthetic character of Japanese bonsai. And so this being a Japanese tree, it dictated a lot of the conscious decisions in terms of the design. And again, this feature is showing this, but only showing a portion of it to sort of entice you and invite you to see more. Is a significant design concept. So I think we ended up lowering the height something like 15 centimeters, which is fairly significant for a tree like this, an old tree. And I think that the overall shape definitely benefits.